April 26, 1947. Yuhuatai, Nanjing. A Japanese general collapses before thousands of cursing Chinese citizens. Two military police drag his limp body to the execution post. A single handgun is raised to the back of his head. The crowd roars. This is the moment Hisao Tani, the man who ordered machine guns to execute 190,000 people at Hisao Temple, faces the same city where his troops killed over 300,000 civilians in 6 weeks. Unlike the private hangings at Nuremberg, which took place inside Nuremberg prison away from public view, this execution was filmed in daylight with witnesses packed into the hillside viewing area. The footage still exists. 9 years earlier, on December 12, 1937, Tani's Japanese 6th Division had become the first unit to breach Nanjing through Zhongshan Gate, triggering 6 weeks of organized slaughter that killed more than 300,000 Chinese civilians and disarmed soldiers. When the war ended, the Allied powers chose private justice. 12 Nazi leaders were hanged behind closed walls at Nuremberg in 1946. The Tokyo trials stretched from 1946 to 1948, 2 full years of proceedings, producing only 7 private executions for Japan's top war criminals. China rejected that model entirely. By 1948, Chinese tribunals had executed over 500 Japanese war criminals in public squares, more than 20 times the Tokyo trial total. Tani would become the most prominent of them, the only general prosecuted specifically for the Nanjing Massacre at the Nanjing Tribunal, and his case would set a precedent the world had never seen. The killing grounds explain Nanjing's fury. At Hisao Temple and Ba Bridge, Tani's troops march columns of bound prisoners and unarmed civilians into open fields, set machine guns on tripods, and opened sustained fire until the bodies stopped moving. More than 190,000 people died at these 2 sites alone. Soldiers then poured fuel over the corpses and set them ablaze, attempting to erase the physical evidence of what had been ordered. They failed. In the months that followed, Chinese charity organizations recovered and buried more than 150,000 bodies from execution sites scattered across the city, and German missionary John Rabe, working from inside the Nanjing safety zone, sheltered an estimated 200,000 Chinese civilians within its boundaries. Rabe's diary, kept in meticulous daily entries, would later become decisive evidence at trial. But the most damning artifact came from Tani himself. In 1938, just months after the massacre, he composed a Chinese calligraphy scroll praising the valiance of his forces in Nanjing, a celebratory record written in the brush style of a cultured officer. That scroll survived the war. In 2016, it was donated to a museum in Nanjing, where it now hangs as silent testimony from the perpetrator's own hand. The general, who would soon claim he knew nothing, had once written in elegant ink of the glory of what his soldiers had done. The scroll remains on permanent display behind protective glass. Tani was arrested in February 1946 in Japan, and by August, he had been extradited to Chinese custody. The Nanjing Tribunal moved faster than any Western court would dare. Survivors testified. Burial records were entered into evidence. Rabe's diary was read aloud. On March 10, 1947, after only months of proceedings, the court convicted Tani and sentenced him to death. His lawyers filed an appeal. On April 25, 1947, President Chiang Kai-shek personally reviewed that appeal and rejected it in writing. Less than 24 hours later, Tani was taken to Yuhuatai. Compare that timeline to Tokyo, where the same year saw the trial still grinding through its 2nd year of testimony, and to Nuremberg, where appeals and procedure had stretched verdicts across long months of legal choreography. The Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung covered Tani's execution from Zurich, noting that the systematic rapes and killings in Nanjing mirrored European war crimes, then being prosecuted thousands of miles away. German press carried the story as well. Decades later, the Simon Wiesenthal Center would cite the Tani case as an early precedent for post-war accountability, a moment when a sovereign nation tried, convicted, and punished an enemy commander on the soil where his crimes occurred. 14 months from arrest to bullet. No Western tribunal had moved at that pace, and none would attempt to. The speed itself became part of the historical record. Tani's defense echoed Nuremberg. Deny everything. He claimed no knowledge of the massacres. He insisted that any killings carried out by his 6th Division had occurred without his orders or awareness. The same superior orders architecture that German defendants had constructed in Bavaria a year earlier. Austrian historian Heidemarie Uhl has noted the precise contradiction. Burial registries, unit movement logs, and field communications placed Tani at the command level for operations that produced more than 300,000 deaths. The paper trail did not match the testimony. Prosecutors built their case on something the world had not yet seen at scale: survivor testimony combined with forensic excavation of mass graves. That methodology would not appear again in international law until the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia began exhuming Bosnian killing fields in the 1990s. Nanjing prosecutors did it nearly 50 years earlier, with hand tools and witness affidavits. The verdict did not end the controversy. Japanese right-wing commentators denounced the trial as victor's justice, a phrase that would echo through every post-war tribunal. Some Japanese veterans went further, treating Tani as a scapegoat and honoring him at private memorial gatherings well into the post-war decades. Those memorials continued until Japanese government crackdowns in the 1980s suppressed the most public ceremonies. But the underlying narrative dispute over who was victim and who was perpetrator never fully resolved. The argument persists in Japanese textbooks and diplomatic exchanges even today. The turning point came not in 1947, but in the decades that followed, as the filmed footage refused to disappear. Swiss sinologist Renaud Hertog has traced how the grainy reels of Tani's execution were digitized, archived, and eventually embedded into modern virtual reality history applications now used in Zurich classrooms. Students put on headsets and stand in simulation among the cursing crowd at Yuhuatai. They see what photography in 1947 captured and what private Western executions left undocumented. Hertog and other educators predict that by 2030, immersive historical education will become a primary tool for countering Holocaust-style denialism, and the Tani footage stands as one of the earliest and clearest visual records of war crimes justice from the 1940s. The case established something the Tokyo and Nuremberg trials could not: a public photograph template for holding military commanders accountable on the ground where their orders were carried out. Hisao Tani was carried to his death because the country he had helped devastate refused to hide its justice behind walls. 14 months from arrest to a single bullet, filmed before a roaring crowd, archived now in headsets worn by schoolchildren in Switzerland. This was not the quiet machinery of Nuremberg or the slow procedure of Tokyo. It was ancient public justice with modern documentation, execution as both ritual and evidence. The footage endures because someone in 1947 decided the world should be allowed to watch. Whether that decision served justice or spectacle remains, even now, an open question that historians continue to debate in conference halls and classrooms.